Welcome to the video of the breakdown of the Anker or Miwa 3800. So this system is pretty interesting because we have 8 magnets on the key and we have also 4 pins on the other side of the key. So here we have the magnets and here the pins. So the keyway is also pretty interesting because we can use our dimple pick from the right or from the left side, or like this. And we also have the magnets sitting in here. So at first, let's check how the lock works. So we have 4 holes in the bottom. These are for the pins. You can see the pins laying here, and here we can have a close-up of one of these pins. So as we can see, the tip of it is a tiny bit beveled, so we can get a false set and have to set each pin at least 2 times. This pin looks a tiny bit special, but it's only like engaging to the spring and making sure you can't push the pin too deep maybe, but it's nothing special. It also has the beveled top. Then we have a few very fragile steel springs. And finally we have the sliders. That's one slider, for example. They are sprung. As you can see, there's a fin at the top, which gets pushed by a spring, pushing from this direction. And like this, the slider can move over here only by magnetic force. And if the force is gone, he will get back outwards. And you can also see here's a tiny step on the magnet. And this one will make us pick every magnet at least 2 times also. Another thing is the tiny springs here. They are really super fragile and they really want to get lost or break if you're not careful enough. So how does it exactly work? Here we have the plug. We can see there are 2 types of openings. One has this blocker here and the other one has it on the other side, and it's always alternating. So this slider will have the spring sitting on the blocker from the inside and gets pushed towards the camera. This one has the same but in the opposite direction, so this will get pushed away from the camera and so on. So that's it from the pins. Here we have the plug with the just super normal holes for the pins, and even if it looks like some threads here, it's not. It's just a plain plug. There's nothing done to it. And then we also have the plug, which has this brass insert here, and you can see there's a square hole which is exactly lining up with the sliders on both sides. So that's probably indicating that it's not always the first slider is blocked from this side, but it can also be blocked here and open here. So we have both openings in the plug. So then we have the sliders. Let's get into them a tiny bit more detailed. So here we have the possible orientations of the magnet on the slider. First, let me show you how one of the sliders magnets looks like. So we have here the magnet sitting on the back. So this here is the magnet. This is just some spacer or whatever. Here's the magnet. It can also sit on this side and it can be polarized as shown on this side here. Let me show you this for this one. So let's put the magnet on here. We can see, when I focus, we can see there's a line in between. So this means we have, for example, South Pole on the left and North Pole on the right. Could also be other way. I can't see it with this I can only see that there's a border between the magnets. And we can also see that it's sitting on the side away from this this pointy part. And now if we take another one, for example this one, it's sitting at the here. We have it sitting at the side of the pointy part. And if I now put the magnetic foil on it, we can see there's no dual pole stuff happening. So this is just a north or a south pole, not both in some orientation. So here we have the possible orientations. It can be one pole up or the other, or one pole on the left and the other on the right, or vice versa, like I showed it here for those magnets located on the right side of the sliders. So we have 4 of these, and each times 2 here. So we have actually 8 positions of the sliders, not taking into account maybe passive sliders which are empty or so for a master keying, or I don't know what's happening there. I just know that's possible for sure. Okay, and now how do we pick it? First we need to know how the sliders exactly work. How do they interact with the key? Because we have on each position we have 2 magnets, but we only have 1 magnet on the key, on the slider. So that means, for example, here we have the magnet in the front. So actually only the upper magnet I'm showing here is interacting with the slider. Not like this. But you can see it's only attracted by this one. So, and for this one, for the other one, here we can see it's only attracted to the lower slider here, lower magnet here. So we actually wouldn't need this and this magnet on the key. So that means that I do not have to use a pick that is imitating both magnets at the same time. So this reduces our pick to basically a single magnet, which I can put into different positions. As we know, each magnet in here has to be complementary to the magnet in the slider itself. So if I have, for example, this here, I would need, so black on the left, like north on the left, south on the right, I would need south on the left and black on the right. Not sure if I said it right, but I would need, if I have this, I would need this on the key so that they are tracked always opposing. And if I just use a very simple pick like this, I have a magnet on here, which is like 1 pole up in this direction, 1 pole down in this direction, which I can imitate if I put it on the other side like this, or I put another one in the same orientation on the back of here too, then they might have to be a bit thinner. So you can see it, I just glued a magnet on it. And you don't need any audio equipment or anything. If the room is quiet, you can just hear what the sliders are telling you. It's much louder than, for example, the EVA MCS, which this tool was initially designed for. Interestingly, the marks on here are actually for the EVA MCS, but they also work pretty well for the Miwa 3800. So basically, I just put my pick in here, basically always this direction. Then I put it first on the, I'll demonstrate it. I put it in here on the first position. You can see it on the black mark. Then I will just do like this and listen if there's something jiggling. If I can hear something rattling, it means the slider in there is not binding and he's moving in his space more or less. It doesn't matter how much he's moving. All I have to know is that he is moving, because that means there's no force on him, and that means he's not blocking the rotation. So I will just skip this slider and go to the next slider. For example, here, the second slider on the right. So I'll go in, I'll just jiggle if I can't hear anything. That means he might be binding, but maybe on this side there's just no magnet on the slider. So I'll stick my pick in the other side and do the same. And if I can't hear anything now, I will just start trying rotations. So I'll first start with this, take some rotation of the core, because the slider was pinched by the rotation. So if I just about right rotate back, the slider might come loose and follow the magnetic force of the pick. So if I can hear any click, I'll immediately stop releasing tension and rotate back on tension. and then I will jiggle again and listen if he's jiggling. So I will do it first in this position, then in this, and so on. And I just have to memorize which positions I tried and which didn't work. Because, for example, if I have already 2 sliders picked and try on this one, I might suddenly lose my, lose these 2 and hear the clicks. So I have to get back to those and set them right. And again, try which orientation is right for this one. So I have to try around a bit, and it's not so easy to figure out the bitting initially. So that takes some time, depending on how well you get along with this pick. But I think you can get it in around 15 minutes if you're good. So that's what it took me, but I'm not sure if that was luck at the first time. But yeah, it can be pretty fast. Yes, that's basically all you need to know. You just start at one position, you just start on this side and look which one is not jiggling. Then you go to the other side and check if he's jiggling on this side maybe. Then you have to look further. And when you have find one who's binding, you try to pick him and memorize which positions were needed. And in the end, you just kind of dial in and always rotate back until the slider just is able to move. Then you get back to tension, because if you rotate too far, you might lose all the others because they are sprung and not without any springs. So that's basically everything you need to know to pick it. Now you only need practice and a bit of dedication, which is kind of the same. Now, how about the dimples? So here we have our flag. It's in this orientation, right flag curved from multipick. Curved is pretty good because we have this dent on the, or this hump on the bottom of the keyway in this orientation. And if we go in with our pick like this, we can just rotate around this. So for example, I've pinned it up on the back, and here you can see I can move the pin really fast. So I only need to move it to here, but I could even move it much further if it was short. So this pick is basically covering all the reach I need. And yeah, so there's no swapping picks in between picking for this. The binding order between the pins and the sliders is kind of overlapping. So I can start on the pins until I get to my fold set, as I showed you in the beginning. Here we have these beveled pin tops. So until I get to those, the sliders, or at least some of the sliders start binding, and I have to pick those without dropping the pins to get the pins completely done, and just care about the sliders. When you're at the sliders at some point, it's basically pretty easy because you're in some rotation and you will not lose any pins up to a certain point, and then you will get more rotation on the core. This means you're at the next part of the pins. So here we have this step. Once you have the core from here to here, this means you already have the pins, the sliders one step closer to how they belong. And then you just have to get them picked one time again. But you're very unlikely to lose the pins from this step, because it is quite some core rotation between this and this part here. So it's actually pretty straightforward. There are no false gates or anything. It's actually a pretty fun magnetic pick, because you only have 4 positions on 2 sides, which you have to try with your magnetic pick. And the dimple pins, they pick basically straightforward. It's a bit uncomfortable to pick them, but it's actually not that hard. If you want to gut this lock, you have only a few things to watch out for. First is you have to pull both cores out a tiny bit, just enough to get the nose, like this one. This is the actuator. to get this one out here. I'll show you in the next frame how this is assembled. And then you can push it out like this and put in these sectioned followers. They are from a Chinese set, which I got from Banggood for, I think, 20 euros, should be the same in dollars. And these are a tiny bit too small for other locks, but they just fit perfectly. So I just push them in like this. If it doesn't want, I can take the back of the tweezers and just push them in like this. But now there's no springs or anything, so I can just do it like this. And it really fits very well. So I push in one and then the next one and so on until I have the plug all out and all of those in. As you can see, they fit so tight, they don't even slip through, but they move very easily. So that's basically the best fit you can get. So if you want to gut this lock, use those. I'm pretty sure it's the best way. Okay, here you can see how the lock is put together. First we have these steel rings here, which always go with one of these C-clips, like also on this side, which goes immediately on the very right part here. In between we have this actuator, which immediately comes after this in here. And in this one we have the controller between inside and outside connection from the core. And because this one is longer on the inside actually, we also have this insert which has these prongs which go like this, and this here enters in here. And here we have another pin which elongates the connection between the tip of the key and this actuator connection between the plug and the actuator. So this goes basically right in here and also on the back. This one in here, and this one gets right to this side, like almost in the middle of the lock. And we also have on both sides of the plug, we have these copper rings or brass rings, which are actually here in the front, and they just push in with the lock. On the outside part of the lock, that's why I know this is the outside, we also have a drill protection, which is going parallel to the keyhole in here, and it can easily fall through the lock, as you could see. So be careful not to lose this one, but if you're just interested in picking, it doesn't make much of a difference if there's drill protection or not. So that's basically everything about the lock.